complain and challenge my information, but when I do a live, they're never here. They're never here. Yeah, they want to hide behind the keyboard. I know. But today, you got me good now, Facebook. Can you hear me? I'm assuming that you can. So we will continue with our, today is Tuesday. Tuesday, what do we do on Tuesday? We reading this biblioteca. We reading the biblioteca. That's what we doing. We're going to read it. We're going through our readings. And we are in Leviticus. And this is Leviticus 5 and 6. And we are, no, I ain't say 5 and 6, it's 6 and 7. 6 and 7 today of Leviticus. We will continue in all the animal sacrificing that this deity requires in order for you to be forgiven of the sins that you're going out here committing. You know, I'm the owner of Smoking Phoenix Cigar Lounge. I gotta light it up. Did y'all know I got censored yesterday on TikTok? If you was here yesterday, you'd have saw me get censored on TikTok. It's funny how you can do all the twerking and half butt nakedness and all that stuff, but the moment we start talking about the politics revolving around the LGBTQ organization, and we was talking about they moved into transgender yesterday, the feed on TikTok gets canceled because somebody complained. This I tell you, the world is whiny as hell. It's a whiny ass world. Can't take nothing. Can't have a conversation. But that's not what today is about. I wanted to fall through your line before I left Georgia, but y'all highway traffic is crazy. Man, what you talking about? This traffic. This is why I make sure that every business I've had, I do not have to drive in traffic. I avoid Atlanta traffic like the plague. Even though I could have court earlier today, it would have meant me being in traffic, going to traffic court. So I chose 1 o'clock just so I don't have to be in traffic. I'd rather go through the problem of having somebody come and watch the lounge and deal with that than to deal with traffic in Atlanta. Oh. But we do got to get started on reading this. I want to make sure we get through it because at 12 o'clock, I do have a hard stop. So as soon as the young lady get here, 12 o'clock, because I got to be up. The court is only like 20 minutes away, but you know, you want to get there early, get your name on the roll so you can get out of there quickly. Because I think they do it based on who walks in the door first. All right, so let's get this thing started. We are Leviticus 6 and 7 today. Just still reading this thing that you would think it was exciting. We was doing Genesis. It was people having stories, and the book was just exciting. And that it had, even though it was contradictory as hell, it had some really good. You know, at least it had some action. You know what I'm saying? It was action drama. Then we got into the Exodus and action drama. Then that was the end of Exodus and all the way through Leviticus so far. The only thing we hearing about is a whole bunch of damn animal sacrifices. So what are we going to talk about today? What is Leviticus 6 and 7 talking about today? More animal sacrifices and how specifically to do these animal sacrifices. You can't just sacrifice the animal. You got to do it certain ways and certain people and all this stuff. So let's look at the murderous. You know, Peter, you would think Peter would be like, the Bible is unholy. The Bible is cruel. The Bible is teaching people to be cruel to animals with all the animals. Like, you think Peter would be against the Bible? Just in reading what we've done over the last couple of weeks, dealing with all the animal sacrifice and waving the blood in the air, like you just don't care. Even though I know wave offering is different, but that's the imagery that comes into your mind. So let's continue. The Lord said to Moses, if anyone sins and is unfaithful to the Lord by deceiving a neighbor about something entrusted to them, or left in the care of, or something stolen, or if they cheat their neighbor, or if they find lost property and lie about it, or if they swear falsely about any such sin that people may commit, when they sin in any of these ways and realize their guilt. You got to realize their guilt. So you might sin and not realize that you are guilty. Realize their guilt. They must return what they have stolen or taken by extortion, and what was entrusted to them, or lost property they found, or whatever it was that they swore falsely about. They must make restitution in full, add a fifth of the value to it, and give it all to the owner on the day they present their guilt offering. Now that's up. Oh, appreciate it, Errol. Errol started off the collection plate over here on YouTube. Appreciate the financial give, Errol. Errol. Now, I ain't never seen it where this is when I used to talk to people and they used to say that all I gotta do is ask for forgiveness, but I told them they got to keep the law. I was like, when you sin against somebody, you're supposed to, full repentance is not you just asking for forgiveness because you realize that you're guilty and you are forgiven of it. No, you have to make restitution towards the person to which you have been found guilty of committing a sin to, that you need to repent. You would think that these evangelicals who read this book will recognize that, hey, not only in order for us to wash away the stain of our ancestors from what they did to the black man in America, we need to pay not only reparations, but we also need to add 1/5 to it. 1/5 of what we think of what would be a fair amount, because they can't get, they gave the value, shit, it'll bankrupt America. But the same evangelicals who are against, the same Christians who are against reparations, are the same ones who are supposed to be believing this. If I was having a conversation, having a debate on the Senate floor talking about reparations, I would say, okay, most of y'all are Christian. This is what your Bible says. Then so y'all should be following the full restitution to people. You did it for the Japanese. You did it for the Jews, to which you didn't even put in concentration camps in America, but you gave them restitution. You paid them. You pay everybody else. You leave, and then here's the thing: when we finished bombing Japan, we went in and fixed up Japan. But when the Europeans finished, and when we finished Germany, we fixed up Germany. We fixed up all the countries, European countries, especially that America and other European countries went to war against. But when they left colonization of Africa, they just walk out the door and makes them sign contracts to hold their Federal Reserve and continue to give them money. Yet everybody else they fix up. I'm going to talk about that in a different video later on today, about the racism that is perpetuated by this book and how it is geared specifically towards Black people, which bewilders my mind as to why any Black person would still be a part of this religion. So let me continue, because before I get mad. And as a penalty, they must bring to the priest, that is to the Lord, their guilt offering, and a ram from the flock, one without defect and of proper value. In this way, the priest will make atonement for them before the Lord, and they will be forgiven for any of the things that they did that made them guilty. You can see that this is something that is beneficial primarily to the wealthy people. A poor person would simply either just lie and just like, look, I can't afford to be cleansed. I can't afford, unless somebody catches me in a sin, I'm not admitting shit. Because for wave offering, for gift offerings, for all kind of offerings for sin, this type of sin, that type of sin, you need a whole herd. You need like thousands of heads of sheep, cattle, and everything. in order to facilitate all this sin that the person is going to be doing and all these sacrifices. And we'd be killing animal carcasses every day, all day. It'd be just a big ass burn pit somewhere if people actually followed this religion. I don't even think people followed it back then to the degree that they're saying it. The Lord said to Moses, give Aaron and his sons this command. These are the relegations for the burnt offering. The burnt offering is to remain on the altar hearth throughout the night till morning, and the fire must be kept burning on the altar. The priest shall then put on his linen clothes with linen undergarments next to his body, and shall remove the ashes of the burnt offering from the fire, that the fire has consumed on the altar, and place them beside the altar. Then he is to take off his clothes and put on others, and carry the ashes outside the camp to a place that is ceremonially clean. The fire on the altar must be kept burning. It must not go out. Every morning, the priest is to add firewood and arrange the burnt offering on the fire and burn the fat of the fellowship offering on it. The fire must be kept burning on the altar continuously. It must not go out. What? Was this the Olympic flame? But you got to keep this fire burning. And I've heard some people who have said that, well, the fire, it was so important to keep the fire burning, because the fire burning represents this Yahweh God when he spoke to Moses as a burning bush. When he comes down on the mountains as flames, that flame is that. But one of the things that I think when I hear when I'm seeing all of this is reminding me of how the fire is also a part of some of the older religious beliefs of their God living in the fire. And their God being a fire. So it's pulling from previous cultures of showing how they are just saying the same thing. Our God consumes things by fire. This is how our God eats. This is the being in the presence of this God, because you had other gods who were in that same format as fire. And fire was very important to these people back then because it allowed for you to feel safer at night. It's cold as shit in the desert actually at night too, but so it provided warmth. But the main thing that fire became so important from, you guys have read the Greek story about Prometheus, but it allowed man to cook food, decrease diseases, as well as protect them from wild animals at night. So this fire worship is similar to animalism. The grain offering. These are the regulations for the grain offering. Aaron's sons, poor people will carry a dove. Yeah, it does give poor people outs for using a dove or baby pigeons, but it's still, you got to go around either collecting them and raising them, or you got to go around trying to find them all the time. It's still horrible. They claim that Jesus was a sacrifice and they don't have to do that anymore. That's what they claim. But Jesus said that he came to fulfill the law, not to destroy the law. That he takes not one tittle from the law. It says that what is the greatest commandment? To love the Father and keep his commandments. So all of that, we ain't got to do this no more, is based on the fact that culturally it is seen improper. It's not culturally approved for people to still do this today. And that culture started changing post-Roman Empire as the Westerners went into the Dark Ages, came out of the Dark Ages to the Middle Ages, and start seeing that, okay, we're conquering all these other Europeans, and they are still practicing animal sacrifices. Just like these people needed ways of separating themselves, Christianity started utilizing other things to separate themselves as well. But according to their book, they're supposed to be keeping this law. Jesus was supposed to be the sacrifice for the atonement of your sin at the end, for the sin that you're still carrying at the day of judgment, not the sin that you have on you today. So basically, they're saying that you can walk around in your sin all day until you die, and then Jesus got you at the back end. That still goes against the book, because even in the New Testament tells that you gotta have a repentant heart and repentant mind. So no, these people are still supposed to be upholding these things. It just went out of fashion. So they have to make up a reason in order to do so. Mm-hmm. Oh, I remember you, Ricky. I think I've seen you on here before, Ricky. But yeah. Teresa, Derek. I see some folks up here. Michelle. All right, let me get it. Where was I? Aaron. Okay, these are the regulations for the grain offering. Aaron's sons are to bring it before the Lord in front of the altar. The priest is to take a handful of the finest flour and some olive oil, together with all the incense on the grain offering, and burn the memorial portion on the altar as an aroma pleasing to the Lord. This anthropomorphized deity, if this deity is sitting up here like a body smelling, and it's pleasing to them, this emotional being, but we already know this deity is emotional and is controlled by emotions. Therefore, it is not God. Could not ever be God, because it's controlled by emotions. Aaron and his sons shall eat the rest of it, but it is to be eaten without yeast in the sanctuary area. They are to eat in the courtyard of the tent of meeting. It must not be baked with yeast. I have given it as their share of food offering presented to me. Like the sin offering and the guilt offering, it is most holy. Any male descendant of Aaron may eat it. For all generations to come, see right here. For all generations to come, it is his perpetual share of the food offering presented to the Lord. Whatever touches them will become holy. Perpetual, meaning without end and continuous. This is supposed to be for the generations of Aaron, which if that are for the male descendants, let me be specific, because this Bible don't really care for women too tough. It is very specific about Aaron and his male descendants having this for generations to come and perpetual. You still have to do the offering in order for Aaron and them to have their perpetual meals, perpetual sacrifices, and all these sorts of things. So it can't cease and stop because this Jesus character comes into play. That just made life easier for the people. And if you think about it, most people gonna take the easy way out. Jesus is the easy way out. This shit that they talk about is the most difficult way of doing all of this. Considering all the stuff you got to do. Continue. The Lord said to Moses, "This is the offering Aaron and his sons are to bring to the Lord on the day that he is anointed. 1/10 of an ephah of the finest flour as a regular grain offering, half of it in the morning and half in the evening. It must be prepared with oil on a griddle. Bring it well mixed and present the grain offering broken in pieces as an aroma pleasing to the Lord. The son who is to succeed him as anointed priest shall prepare it. It is the Lord's perpetual share and is to be burned completely. Every grain offering of the priest shall be burned completely. It must not be eaten." Because it is in their belief this deity eats by fire. So why would a divine being need to eat anything? You're divine. You're God Almighty. You don't need to eat. What are you eating for? What are you eating for? You getting hungry? You got hunger pains? But this is just a bunch of rules that none of these people follow. Let's finish off this chapter. The Lord said to Moses, "Say to Aaron and his sons, these are the regulations for the sin offering. The sin offering is to be slaughtered before the Lord in the place that the place the burnt offering is slaughtered. It is most holy. The priest who offers it shall eat it. It is to be eaten in the sanctuary area, in the courtyard of the tent of meetings." Courtyard your 10th meeting. Whatever touches any of the flesh will become holy. And if any of the blood is splattered on a garment, you must wash it in the sanctuary area. The clay pot of meat is cooked in must be broken. So you now made this whole clay pot and it must be broken. If it is cooked in a bronze pot, the pot is to be scoured and rinsed with water. Any male in a priest family may eat it. It is most holy. But any sin offering whose blood is brought into the tent of meetings to make atonement in the holy place must not be eaten. It must be burnt up. There's a whole lot of killing of some animals going on. Unnecessarily killing animals. Now, I'm not telling everybody got to stop eating meat, even though we should. But all this animal sacrifice is incredibly barbaric. And I'm not saying that, I'm not trying to put that on every culture that practice animal sacrifice, because I've known people who practice Ifa. Their level of animal sacrifice is nowhere near this. If you think about it, with the rules of this book, what are considered sins? Not one person in this 2 million encampment would not sin damn near every day, right? Then you also have your fellowship offering. You got, the offerings, your other wave offerings and all these other offerings. So you're going to be sacrificing at least, let's just say 10 animals a day per person. And I think I'm hitting that on a low number, because most people are, if you go by this book, you're pretty much in perpetually sinning all the time. But let's just say 10. You have 10, you have like 7 sins, and then you have your other offerings, your grain offering, your fellowship offering, and all this stuff. But you're like sacrificing a good 7 animals a day, 7, 8, 9 animals a day. 2 million people. The blood, the land would be slick with blood, which would be another sin, because it would be so much blood flow, and you'd be touching it, which is also makes you unclean. How in the hell is this believable to people? That, well, one, we know that they're not reading this, but that would be, I think if a person read that and thought about it, like projected it in their mind like a movie, they would realize that it is absolutely impossible for those people to have maintained this lifestyle. It would be absolutely impossible for you to not be sinful. They would have, over 10 years, animals would have gone extinct in this particular area. And when I say this particular area, I'm talking about the Sinai Peninsula, the Levant, the whole damn thing. Because they wouldn't be able to breed enough goats and cows and sheep and the pigeon. Now, even though we got way too many damn pigeons today, they wouldn't be able to breed enough. These animals would go extinct. And the priest would be working day and night. And then there's so many rules of who can touch what, and we're going to get into a few more. It will be, it's impossible, right? There'll be no animal. Next thing you know, they'll be like, we got to go down and get some giraffe. Well, think about it. The Aztec civilization, when they was going through some droughts, especially, they were sacrificing so many people at a time, that it became a business in the Aztec community to go out and grab up other tribes outside of themselves and bring them in for sacrifice. Like that's if you saw that movie Apocalypto, even though it had a ton of historical inaccuracies, that was one of the underlying concepts, that those guys, that was a business for them to keep going out there and find these small villages or towns or communities and decimate them and bring them into slavery, and they wouldn't even bring them into slavery, to capture them just to bring them for sacrifice, right? That became a big business during that time frame. This would be they would have to go and conquer other lands to find other animals in order to sacrifice, if just these 2 million people were committed to this type of butchery. You have over 200 commandments and abominations in the Old Testament. No one can live by these rules. No, you couldn't, and they knew you couldn't. That's why they had to have all this animal killing. All right, so let's do a little bit more animal killing in chapter 7, because I do want to have some free time where we just talk about anything. So, because I got to leave at 12, I got to stop at around 12. These are the regulations. These are the regulations for the guilt offering, which is most holy. The guilt offering is to be slaughtered in the place where the burnt offering is slaughtered, and its blood is to be splashed against the sides of the altar. You know how thick this blood on this altar would be with 2 million people? Okay. All of its fat shall be offered, the fat tail and the fat that covers the internal organs. Love that fat. I know some black folks like, yeah, man, I put a flavor it. Both kidneys with the fat on them near the loins, and the long lobes of the liver, which is to be removed with the kidney. The priest shall burn them on the altar as a food offering presented to the Lord. It is a guilt offering. Any male in the priest family may eat it, but it must be eaten in the sanctuary. It must be holy. I guess this guy want to make sure he's watching you when you eat it. You can't eat it. You got your favorite spot on the side of the mountain where you're watching the sunset. Can't eat that. You got to eat in the altar so this guy can like, how it tastes. It taste good. What that taste like? I mean, I smell the sweet aroma, but how that taste? Oh, they love their blood. Hey, look, they came out of the Babylonian captivity. They knew they was all into the blood sacrifice, sacrificing animals as well. So this is what they knew, and they just reformed it to fit them. And then they tried to backdate it to make it seem like Moses was doing this before the Babylonians. But even let's say this was true. Well, hell, it wasn't like the Egyptians or the Kemetic people weren't doing animal sacrifice, or the Sumerians or anybody else. Animal sacrifice started a long time ago. Where am I at? Yes, right there. The same law applies to both the sin offering and the guilt offering. They belong to the priest who makes atonement with them. The priest who offered a burnt offering for anyone may keep its hide for himself, which is worth money. Every grain offering baked in an oven or cooked in a pan or on a griddle belongs to the priest who offers it. And every grain offering, whether mixed with olive oil or dry, belongs equally to all the sons of Aaron. You see, this is pretty much the same as pastors getting rich off the people, because they're getting to keep imagine you got 2 million people, they bring you offering. You get to keep the hides of all these animals, which can be used and sold. You get to keep all the food that they're bringing, all the and remember in the previous chapter, it got to be the finest grain and the finest what's that shit? Dough, not dough, but you know what I'm saying. Where is it? It must be the finest of the flour. Shit, I don't know why I couldn't think of that. And the finest olive oil. So the priest, you got to give the priest your best stuff, and then they take possession of it. So it's the same mindset of priests getting rich based on the people feeling like they owe this deity something. And that was one of the problems with me. I don't owe people like, well, the creator created you, so you owe the creator. No, the frick I don't. Did I ask you to create me? I owe you nothing. It's just like your children really don't owe you shit. They don't. You chose to bring them into this world, and that responsibility means that you got to take care of them and help them to, and then show them how to grow to become adults. But they don't owe you nothing, not a goddamn thing. I don't owe this deity nothing, because I didn't choose to come here Like my kids didn't choose to come here, as far as just a base understanding. I know we can get into more esoteric thought processes of the consciousness choosing which birth canal it wants to come out of, and that sort of thing. But as far as owing, I owe you nothing. And your kids don't owe you shit. You took on that responsibility. Now, except when I give my kids some money, I say, you got to pay me back. You know, you owe me the money I just gave you because I told you you got to pay me back. Sometimes I do that to make them so that they understand responsibility. But I don't owe this deity nothing, not a goddamn thing. And neither does anybody else. And that is such a freeing thought to realize that you don't even owe your allegiance to this deity. You don't owe any sacrifices. You don't owe anything. I give my son advice. I give my daughters advice. They have the choice of whether or not they take it or not. And if they decide not to, it doesn't mean I'm going to love them less or I'm going to punish you for not taking the route that I just thought is best for you. It's your life. You go live it how you want to live it. Just don't do anything to anybody you wouldn't want done to yourself, and you're good. That's it. The whole Bible should just be just one sentence. Just one sentence. Do unto others as you would have them to do unto yourself. Bam. That's it. Nothing else. I'm good. Because if you think about it, everything can be summed up into that. But I didn't write it. I should do that. I'll put a whole book and make it thick, right? Be like that thick. And call it the true Bible of life. And then you open it up and all it says is, do unto others as you would have them to do unto yourself. For there is nothing that you shall do nothing to anyone that you will not be done, you would not want done to yourself. Therefore, all morality is wrapped up into what you would like, how you would like to live. That's it. One paragraph. Live by this and you good. The God of Renz. Anyway, let me stop. These are the regulations for the fellowship offering anyone may present to the Lord. If they offer it as an expression of thankfulness, then along with this thanks offering, now we got a thank offer, they are to offer their thick loaves made without yeast and without olive oil mixed in, thin loaves made without yeast and brushed with oil, and thick loaves of the finest flour, well kneaded and with oil mixed in. Along with their fellowship offering of thanksgiving, they are to present an offering with thick loaves of bread made with yeast. Didn't they just say all this? They are to bring one of each kind as an offering, a contribution to the Lord. It belongs to the priest who splashes the blood of the fellowship offering against the altar. The meat of their fellowship offering of thanksgiving must be eaten on the day it is offered. They must not leave none of it till morning. If, however, their offering is the result of a vow or a free will offering, the sacrifice shall be eaten on the day they offer it. But anything left over may be eaten the next day. This is where we get our, leftovers, y'all. I don't see if Angelina's on here. I think she needed to hear that part because she would throw away my leftovers real quick, fast, in a hurry. I like my leftovers. See, she up here with the thanks offering that you got to eat it all in the same day. I'm down here, with my other offering, with my leftovers. Yeah, more splashing of the blood on gotta splash that blood on this altar now. I'm serious. This altar should get bigger and bigger over the years because of all the blood that dries and makes it bigger. The designs of it should become, you wouldn't even see the designs after a while because it'd be covered with blood, just big ass blood looking altar. Yeah, oh, there you go, Angelina. You hear that? Let me read. I gotta read this part one more time just for Angelina's sake. If, however, their offer, read. If, however, their offering is a result of a vow or or is a free will offering, the sacrifice shall be eaten on the day they offer it. But anything left over, and let me say it one more time, anything left over may be eaten on the next day. That means on the next day, the food's still good, Angelina. Stop throwing away them sliders just because I left them sitting out. I got a stomach made of iron from the Marine Corps. I can eat them sliders the next day. Just because I left them out doesn't mean that the meat's gone bad. Stop throwing away my leftovers. Them chicken sliders and beef sliders that she makes are amazing. Throwing away that good stuff. Hey, don't be telling people it was 3 days later. That they don't need to know that part. It was not 3 days later. It was not 3 days later. Let's see, we had the event. No, that was overnight. That was the next day. I don't know, but she threw away the good food. Still away a whole bunch of food, y'all. I was in my feelings. Me and Ghost was in our feelings. We cleaning up and everything. Yeah, it was the next day because we had the party event, and then that was the next day. Mm-hmm. We turned our back, and she done threw away the goddamn on sliders that we'd have ate them. Ladies, y'all need to understand that men will eat leftovers. All right? We don't care if they leave them out. As long as they don't smell funny, we good. And it depends on how funny they smell, because, you know, depends on what level. All right, let me go. Any meat of the sacrifice left over till the third day must be burned. The third day must be burned. If any meat of the fellowship offering is eaten on the third day, the one who offered it will not be accepted. It will not be reckoned to their credit, for it has become impure, and the person who eats of any of it will be held responsible. So you can give your offering, go away thinking that you good to go, but because the priest mess up and still eats it on the third day, now your offering is invalid. Now the priest is also invalid. So now you got to redo it. You got to redo your sacrifice because the priest messed up. I guess that's when the priest come up and ask the church for forgiveness, y'all. Meat that touches anything ceremonially unclean must not be eaten. It must be burned up. As for other meats, anyone ceremonially clean may eat it. So long as you clean, you can eat it. But if anyone who is unclean eats any meat of the fellowship offering belonging to the Lord, they must be cut off from their people. Y'all understand that? Let's say you're one of the poor people in the community. And then you go and you eat the meat of the fellowship offering because they threw it out, they burn it up. It's, and now you're cut off from the people. You are already poor. You're already in a bad way. You're just hungry. And you see all this animals sacrificing and burnt meat, and you smelling that sweet aroma. Even though they ain't say nothing about putting no seasoning on none of this. And you are now cut off from the community. You are already cut off. Now you really cut off from the community. That's vile. That's vile. Really vile. Just messed up. That you would treat people this way. But we continue. Anyone who touches something unclean, whether human unclean or an unclean animal, or any unclean creature that moves along the ground, and then eats any of the meat of the fellowship offering belonging to the Lord, must be cut off from their people. So if you touch a woman, see, this is some of the things that don't make sense. Whether a human is unclean, so somebody who's been excommunicated, you touch them, now you're unclean and you must be cut off from the people. You touch an animal that's unclean, you're cut off from the people. You touch anything that moves on the ground, one of the locusts, something that is considered unclean, you must be cut off from the people. Now, I'm sure they say, well, you're cut off from the people. You're excommunicated. Come make some sacrifices. Give us some money. Give us some items, and then we'll let you back in. But how you're walking around in the so-called wilderness, you're liable to touch unclean animals all the time. Most women find out that they are unclean by their menstrual cycle when it happens, when it starts. There are times where you're touching a woman, not sexually, just touching her. I'm just hold on to her own. We're just walking down the street and bam, she starts. It's like, now she unclean. Now I'm unclean. Either I got to go make this sacrifice or I got to be cut off from the people. You can't help a homeless person because they're unclean. They might be injured, but you can't help them. And maybe this is the basis of the Good Samaritan story. When they see the person on the side of the road and people just kept passing by, but the Samaritan wound up helping because they weren't worrying about being clean or unclean. It was more about just helping some people. Like I said, the Bible has its moments of goodness, but moments. But this is a methodology of control as well, that we're going to make sure that we have a way to keep people giving to the priesthood and giving to the government, because we can cut them off from all the people, and nobody wants to be cut off from the people. So this is some mental cruelty that this Bible is perpetuating in this situation. So continue. The Lord said to Moses, say to the Israelites, do not eat any of the fat of the cattle, sheep, or goats. The fat of an animal found dead or torn by wild animals may be used for any other purpose, but you must not eat it. Anyone who eats the fat of an animal, which y'all see, I be reading and things be popping in my mind and made me laugh. I'm gonna tell y'all in a minute what made me laugh and finish this part. Anyone who eats the fat of an animal, which is from which a food offering may be presented to the Lord, must be cut off from their people. So all y'all who've been eating that fat back, talking about the fat of the steak is the part that's the good part, and where the flavor's at. Y'all supposed to be cut off from the people. And wherever you live, you must not eat the blood of any bird or animal. Anyone who eats blood must be cut off from their people. Now, Jehovah's Witness, they pull it from somewhere else, but this isn't like a support thing for them. This is why they don't get blood transfusion. If I'm tell you right now, I think who else doesn't do that? It's not only Jehovah's Witness, but somebody else don't do that as well. But I'm gonna tell you right now, I could be, if I had grown up Jehovah's Witness, but then my child needed, my baby girl, she needed a blood transfusion. Both my girls needed blood transfusion because they was born premature. I'd be damned. I'd have Jehovah Witness my way right on out. You'd have Jehovah Witness me walking right out that damn religion. Because my daughters would have got them blood transfusions. But yeah, so what popped in my mind was said the fact that the animal found dead or torn by wild animals may be used for any other purpose, but you must not eat it. One of my favorite moments of television history was when the Beverly Hillbillies first got there, and there was some roadkill, and the city was picking up the roadkill, but Granny had jumped out and she was like, I seen it first. And she threatened dude with the shotgun who was doing his civic duty, and then got home and made some roadkill stew. Angeline said Islam had the belief, but it changed in 1983. Yeah, Islam does. They do drain the blood out of their animals. So Islam does that as well as the Jewish people. It's making it halal. It must be halal. My Muslim guy who comes here, I always mess with him. I was like, come on, man, eat this, man. It's halal. But I want you to think about it. Let's be realistic. Is it even possible to drain all the blood? out of an animal. Is that even possible? Sure, you can drain and cut them up, and the blood is draining, and yeah, the overwhelming majority of the blood from animals are drained out. But all the blood of an animal can never be drained out. There are always going to be remnants within the animal. Y'all know how I am. I'm big about finite words. When you say all, you mean all. There should be no blood in the animal at all. None. Not one speck. Not from some residuals in the veins. And I ain't talking about a thin line of residual. If you say all, that means all of them. I was irritating the shit out of a dude yesterday because he said he was using finite terms. I was like, okay, you're going to use finite terms. And I caught him in a twist. I said, no, you said all. You said every. And I was like, don't talk about every. Just because you had a few bad experiences, you can't say every. Give me a minute to finish this, and then what's that? All win, Brian. So Brian, give me a few minutes, and I can tell. Let me finish this one, and I get, because that's outside of what we're talking about right now. But I don't mind talking about that. We do outside things as soon as we finish this reading on Tuesdays. So let's finish this one up, because the priest got to get their part. The Lord said to Moses, say to the Israelites, anyone who brings a fellowship offering to the Lord is to bring part of it as their sacrifice to the Lord. With their own hands, they are to present the food offering to the Lord. They are to bring the fat together with the breast and wave the breast before the Lord as a wave offering. Hey, okay. So the priest shall burn the fat on the altar, but the breast belongs to Aaron and his son. You see how Aaron and them getting the best parts, right? It's impossible. But you're going to make sure the priest get the best part. You are to give the right thigh to your fellowship offering to the priest as a contribution. You got to get that right thigh. And they always saw the left as being unlucky or witchcraft or something like that. The son of Aaron, who offers the blood and the fat of the fellowship offering, shall have the right thigh as his share. From the fellowship offering of the Israelites, I have taken the breast that is waved and the thigh that is presented, and have given them to Aaron the priest and his sons as their perpetual share from the Israelites. Perpetual. There's that word again, perpetual. So they're not supposed to stop this. This is the portion of the food offering presented to the Lord that will be allotted to Aaron and his sons on the day they were presented to serve the Lord as priests. On the day that they were anointed, the Lord commanded that these Israelites give this to them as a perpetual share for the generations to come. This then are the regulations for the burnt offering, the grain offering, the sin offering, the guilt offering, the ordination offering, and the fellowship offering. So when y'all go to these churches, don't get mad that they got 7 offerings: burnt offering, grain offering, sin offering, guilt offering, ordination offering, and fellowship offering. That's 6 offerings, which the Lord gave Moses at Mount Sinai in the desert of Sinai on the day he commanded the Israelites to bring their offering to the Lord. Now, if Moses had wrote this, would he have written it, that last sentence, that way? No, he would not have. This is one of those things that when I read it, I said, well, why would Moses be writing in this style? Moses is writing in like third person. Even at the beginning of that one said, the Lord said to Moses. If I was writing this about my account, I would write, and the Lord said to me, say to the Israelites. I wouldn't say, and the Lord said to Moses, because I'm Moses. The Lord said to Renz. And at the end, I wouldn't say, which the Lord gave me. I would say what the Lord gave me at Mount Sinai, not what the Lord gave Renz, because if I'm writing this as first person, not third person, which is why we know this wasn't written till during and after the Babylonian captivity. And no, Moses never existed. That cranberry juice and crackers was good. Your daughter and wife are left-handed. Yeah, your son is left-handed. Yeah, it was, people used to view that left-handed thing up until like the mid 1900s. So it's a fairly recent thing that left-handed people ostracized. Not being ostracized is fairly new when you compare it to this time frame, this known time frame of man. Prior to that, nah. Yeah. So, and you know, I actually had my grandmother could not, because she was still kind of, you know, had a little bit of that in as far. Well, my grandmother, she was very superstitious. She still did, you know, roots and stuff like that, even though she was Christian. She hated when I can switch hit when I played baseball. So oftentimes in the mid innings, just to keep them on their toes, I was switching out bat left-handed. She couldn't stand that. Hated that. So this concludes another reading of this book. As we said, we're going to keep reading this book word for word. If there are contradictions, they will be pointed out. If there are things that don't make sense, we'll point it out. This is part of our deconstructing process. In order for us to truly deconstruct, we got to know, we have to read it. And most people have never read this book. Some of us have left this religion without having to read it because there was already enough of what you read that was like, that's good enough right there. But we're going to get even more, and that's why we're reading this thing. Plus, for those people, you need to read your Bible. We're reading it. That's why most of us left, because we read this damn book, this damnable book, because this book has corrupted man more than any. I would say this is the most corrupt religion that has ever existed. I put money on it. I put money on it. So my man Brian, so welcome, Brian. I don't think you've ever been on the channel before. Excuse the graininess of this video. I chose the wrong camera, so my actual camera I use is not working. It's not on. I'm not using that one. So if you're here with me tomorrow, you'll see a better camera, a better visual on here. But thank you, and please subscribe to the channel. But this channel is dedicated to deconstructing. So Brian said, my thoughts on stolen stories from Kemet, and do I follow Ray Hagen's work? I don't follow Ray Hagen's work. I've heard of him. I've listened to him a few of his. There was a time frame back when me and Kevin Wesley used to do videos together. There was a few times that Ray Hagen was supposed to be on the podcast with us, but things just didn't work out so that he could do it. So I do know of him, and I've seen him, and his videos do pop up on my stream sometimes, but I just really haven't taken. I've listened to a few of his videos. So I like the dude. He's cool. He's cool. He's good to go. As far as these stories being stolen from the committee, yes. Especially if you go through, when we talked about, if you go to the playlist. So for everybody who's seeing this for the first time, you're saying, damn, y'all already in Leviticus, 6 and 7. I want to see more. You can go to YouTube, look at the playlist, and you'll see the Genesis videos, Exodus videos, and catch up to Leviticus. Many of their stories, thank you for the subscription, brother. Many of the stories, we demonstrated how they were taken from Comedics, taken from the Sumerians, the Assyrians, Akkadians, Babylonians, the Greeks, that these stories aren't new. When we look at the time frame that these people wrote this story, which was post-Babylon, well, during the latter end of the end of the Babylonian captivity, in around 500 BCE, that 530 to 540 to 530 BCE, they incorporated stories that they have heard of and knew of from people around them. The Moses story, when we talked about that, there was a guy named Yusuf, that the Joseph story had elements, similar element from the Yusuf and the Joseph story, as well as the Ramoses story, that it was a comedic story of those who the last worshipers of the Akhten who escaped into the Sinai Peninsula, and when Tutankhamun came into power and Akhenaten was taken out. So there are tons of similarities within the stories that we know the first writers weren't the so-called Hebrew people, because there is no such thing as a Hebrew people until the first mentioning of them is around 1400 BCE. Understand, Akhenaten and his followers was around the 1440. When Ramoses, the last worshippers of the Akhten, was around 1440. Right? So, I mean, 1440. And I said when was the Meneptah Stele? What's the date of the Meneptah Stele? Because there's some time between. There's some time between. So you got the Meneptah Stele, which is the first mentioning of any Hebrew people. That is dated around 1210 BCE. Okay, so you got that around 1210 BCE. Then, but the Akhten was around 1440 BCE. That's at least 200 years for the last followers of the Akhten who moved to the Levant and were in the hills of the Levant to then become part of and become this Israelite people. Then you had the Bronze Age collapse that happened right after around 1210. After the Bronze Age collapse, many of the people from the land moved into the hillside and then a lot of them would have joined up with these hillside Israelite people, these worshipers of the Akhten. Now, these would have been Semitic people, Canaanites, Phoenicians, Philistines, all of them. They would all have became one, and their stories would have become intermixed. And that's why you get, your Els and Asherahs and all those sorts of things. And it's not until almost about 600-700 years later that Hezekiah said, "Nah, we got to redo this stuff," and we started being punished by Yahweh, by Jehovah, the storm god, which is Enlil, and changed the religion. And changing the religion is not hard. It is not hard. I'm doing some research right now on the decline of Christianity, and one of the things that I found interesting that has created a huge decline in Christianity over the last years, and these larger church organizations are splitting, is because of the LGBTQ agenda and churches allowing for their marriages, ordaining priests and bishops in those religions, and it's creating huge splits in these religions. So they are changing. Even the Presbyterian Church changed the canon to allow them in there. So that's just an example that they will change this book. And all you need after you make a change, one generation, and the change is solidified. That's all you need to change it, is one generation. You got some 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 12 years old growing up today. You make a change, those 12-year-olds will have always known it to be whatever this change is. And for them, it's a done deal. The problem is that we don't live in a time frame where people don't have the ability to go back and read stuff. Back when people couldn't read, you can change anything you wanted. They would never know. There also, commandment says that a priest can kill the daughter if she commits fornication. Yep. Priests can kill their daughters, all that stuff. Priests can only marry virgins. That'll be interesting. You should go to your pastor and ask, was your wife a virgin when you met her, when y'all got together? He said no. You messed up, brother. Palestinian people are suffering because of these chosen people. They are. What they are doing to the Palestinians right now is a violation of human rights, but they're basing it on this book. Abraham was promised this land, and so we've taken it. So they're violating these people for that. Yep, Asherah, Aset, and Heru, Asar, Aset, and Heru. Yeah, that was the Kemetic Trinity. That was one of the Kemetic Trinities was Asar, Set, and Heru. And they just took that whole Trinity thing and ran with it. Also, the Naha story came from an older story from the Babylon called the Epic of Gilgamesh. Oh, you saying Noah? Okay, you threw me off right there. Right, yeah, Noah's story is a combination of a whole bunch of things. I am very big about the whole flood thing. I love talking about the flood because it is one of the easiest things to disprove and demonstrate so many facets of how this religion is a copy. You know, the Epic of Gilgamesh, the Atrahasis, their flood stories, these jokers just pretty much ripped it off. Plan on writing a book about the subject? Man, look, I've been writing a book I started writing a relationship book back in 2017. I still ain't finished. Still writing it. It ain't even that long. But I'm dedicating myself to finishing that book this year. I don't know about writing a book, man. It will be easier for me to just make speeches, like written out long form speeches or audiobook. Actually, let me put it that way. It'd be easier for me to do an audiobook than do that. But it requires time. I do have time to write a book, though. I do. That I would lie to y'all if I said I didn't. We'll see about that. Religious people only enjoy living in the dark ages. Oh yeah, of course. The Renaissance was a beautiful thing. The Renaissance in Europe was a beautiful thing. It was a time of enlightenment. They did get better. They still have a long way to go. But, in history, you learn that the Renaissance era ended at the industrial area. The Age of Discovery. But the Age of Discovery was still part of the Renaissance for the Europeans. And then you had the Industrial Age. But there's still a Renaissance that is continuing. The opening of the mind of people is a continuous process. Still, most people are still living in a dark age mentality with just a slight amount of light, in the fact that they realize some of their morality is wrong. But they should realize that the entirety of this book is dark ages. During the Trump era, evangelicals has split them into two groups, especially Black evangelicals. What's your take? Basically, your white evangelicals who split, they are your racists. They want to uphold a time frame where, and I'm doing a video later on today, come hell or high water, and the creek don't strike, the creek don't rise. I'm doing a video about the fact of how this book perpetuated racism prior to racism being created in the 1500s, the late 1400s, 1500s by Europeans in order to control the masses of people of color around the world. But how the Hebrew people in the Talmud, they specifically pointed out Black people as the curse of Ham. Well, this technically should be the curse of Canaan, but I'm going to talk about that later on today. Evangelicals are the ones who are still carrying that torch. Evangelical Black people, they're just delusional. They're holding on to heaven so tightly, and because of oppression, people who are the most oppressed are the most religious, and they are holding on to it because that's their only out. They can't see how they can create a heaven now, so they have to hold on to it. They need it. And unfortunately, and it's the one thing and this is probably why my channel doesn't grow as much as it could. In order for most people to walk away from a religion, you got to give them something else. You have to give them another spirituality that they can then hold on to. People require, for the most part, most people require some form of spirituality. And I just didn't want to create I didn't want to create a religious following. I'm not good at that because I'm very mean when it comes to it. I'm very straightforward. I'm not going to coddle people. So you can't do it. You're so right about white ministers. Some are so prejudiced. Trump is their God. Exactly. Are these religious symbols around your neck? These are symbols that became religious symbols. Like the Ankh wasn't originally a religious symbol. The Ankh is an alchemical symbol of the balance between the masculine and feminine energy, right? The hand of Hansama became the hand of Hansama, but originally called the evil eye. Not so much. It can be considered. I think this one did originate as it's not a religious. It originated as a magic talisman that most cultures have utilized in order to prevent people who had evil intentions towards you from using their little evil magic. So at one point, this was called the Hand of Mary, because Christians used to put this above their door, and women used to do it for magical fertility rites and preventing evil Lelutu or Lilith from coming in and killing their babies. So this was more of a magical talisman than it was a religious talisman. Now religion has adopted them, and then that's what most people know about them. But this symbol was around before the Kemetic people came around. What are your thoughts on the Gnostic versions of creation? They are saying the creator of this world is not a god and that he is a materialistic realm of the state. Yeah, I did a video a while back about the demiurge. Yeah, I don't think the demiurge created this universe. I understand the story, and the demiurge would actually make more sense than this Christian story. But I don't think the demiurge actually this one of the first energies that left the all, decided it was jealous and wanted to control and trap all the other souls that left the all and placed them in the human body and created this fake earth and the virgin, and we're supposed to be trying to escape this earth through knowledge. I do agree with the idea that we escape this matter form existence through gaining knowledge and having understanding and walking in the wisdom of it. I mean, you have to be able to display it to do it. But I don't think that there's a deity, a demigod that is purposely trying to control us and control everybody. It's kind of like they need a scapegoat. I think it's just the process of how things are. Your consciousness is existing in this matter form right now, and your journey is to go to a higher form. Or if you want to be stupid or dumb or ignorant, you stay into a lower, or stay into this form, which is a lower form. Oh, messed that up. What the Bible did for me was made me seek the truth, because it says that on the cover of it's a version. True, it's a version of what I wondered. And I began reading and researching, and it led me back to ancient Africa. I know the original story and the esoteric meanings of the Bible scripture and the mindset of the lower and higher vibrational beings. Exactly. You have an evil eye bracelet. I used to have one. My daughter stole it. My kids steal all my stuff. When I had dinner with them next month, I'm pretty sure they're going to take some more stuff. I left my watch at home. Most people think that we walk away from this religion because we got hurt by the church or something like that. It's a good excuse for them to say, yo, you church hurt. But the church hurt comes from, I read and understood this Bible, and I see all the contradictions. I see all the translation after mistranslation and more mistranslation and contradictions and things of that nature, and the vileness of it, the evil of it. And the hurt is really, I can't believe my parents made me learn this bullshit, or I stayed that long in this bullshit. It is not because of a person. It is because of study that most of us walk away from this book. And then when you start, and it will lead you to ancient studies, whether it's African or Levant or anybody else. And then when you look at other ancient cultures, like, okay, these cultures had similarities to them as well. So what we're really looking at is a teaching, an alchemical teaching, a hermetic teaching that was widely spread around the world. And then people made them into their own cultural preferences because they created their own separations from each other, not realizing all people are just people. I was looking into NDEs and reincarnation for a few months, and today your video was recommended. I know I did some video about reincarnation. What's an NDE? Okay, I'll look up howdy. Because I do like researching other people's thought process on reincarnation. Hold on. I got to drink some of this little shake that Angelina made for me. I do agree to some level of reincarnation. Depending upon how far it goes. Oh, near-death experience. Yeah. I always like the near-death experience. Like, I had a near-death experience, and I went and I saw heaven. You say, oh, damn, you didn't go nowhere. You went in your mind. That's where you went. You were inside your mind. And you've been told, you know, if I tell you over and over and over and over again, you hear it over and over and over again, that at the end, at death, you're going to see this light, and you're going to go into the clouds, and they're going to be a city in the clouds, and you're going to have these angels in white robes, and they're going to have wings and all these sorts of things. And you see all this imagery of, you know, especially if you go to Europe and look at like a lot of the old churches and the tapestries and the paintings, you see all these little cherubims or these fat little white babies and all these sorts of things. So when you have a near-death experience, of course, that's what you see, because that's what your brain has been trained to see. Because when you look up and you ain't got to look it up, you can just Google, you know, pictures of angels correct pictures of angels from the Bible. None of them look like what the Europeans drew. So if the Bible is describing a cherubim as having, I think a cherubim has 4 separate heads, but then the Greeks drew the cherubim as these little fat little babies. Why is that when people have a near-death experience, they see the fat little babies and they don't see the 4-headed dude? They don't see the wheels and the wings with all the eyes on them. They don't ever see that, which is how this book describes these beings. But they never see that. They always see what pop culture shows them. So it's a mind thing. It is a conditioning thing. It is not that other BS. Yep. I stopped going to church because I was like, this is some bullshit. And then when I was going, because of whom I was with at the time, I would sit there and just be taking some notes like, yeah, this is going to make a good video because he just said some old bullshit right there. That's going to be a good video. He just said some contradictory shit. That's going to be a good video. Mm-hmm. You do see whatever people show you. Oh, yeah. For me, it's the opposite. When I read the Bible, I see a good God, and evil things happen in the world because of sin. There's no contradictions for me in the Bible. It also explains where evil is coming from, and that God wants us to protect. God wants to protect from it. I'm new to your channel. I don't want to hurt you by this, but this is how I experience the Bible. And your experience with the Bible is your experience. But to say that the Bible doesn't contradict itself, that it doesn't have things that we would consider today as immoral, that this God is perpetuating as moral, I cannot agree with you there in the slightest. So you think it's moral to own slaves because your God gives the instructions and rules for whom you can take as slaves for perpetuity and pass them down to your children, whether it's a slave wife or slave servants. You see that as a good thing, that your God is good for doing that. I hate trying to scroll on Facebook. You think it's a good thing that if a young girl who is not betrothed to a man is raped and they're caught and the man pays the father 50 pieces of silver, that victim has to now marry her rapist and provide children for him. That's a good thing. You don't see the contradiction of Moses supposedly turned all the waters in Kemet red. I mean, turn all the water in Kemet into blood. Not turn it red, but turn it into blood. But yet somehow people were able to dig along the sides of the river to get water. Yet somehow, and it says he turned all the water that was in bowls and basins into blood. But how did the priest of the Pharaoh still have pots of water that they could turn into blood? Doesn't work. And then he killed all the animals early. And then later on, there's still some more animals that get killed by hail. You supposedly killed all the animals. Where are all these other animals coming from? There's some contradictions in there. One version of Genesis, the animals are created before man. But then in the Garden of Eden, the animals are created after man. But this God commanded genocides of a bunch of people. And even in the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, people say, okay, well, you know, they were so evil that this God destroyed them. It doesn't really talk about the levels of evil that they had, right? Most people assume that it's sodomy, not understanding what they're actually talking about when those men wanted to know those other angelic men. It wasn't about going around and we just committing sodomy all over the place. It's like buck breaking rather. They wanted to sodomize them to show their dominance, not that this is what they just want to do, which is evil as hell still. But Abraham couldn't find 10 babies in that town. There wasn't 10 3-year-olds, 3 5-year-olds who were innocent. And yet he destroyed that town and the one next to it. And when you read the Atrahasis, you find out that the same similar story was told in another book, in their book, and the same city is destroyed. That is not a copy. So these are where we have our disagreements. The Gnostic concept of creation, reincarnation, and simulation theory seems to interconnect. I have to research more of that. I know we're talking about Thursday. We do. So on Thursday, we read through a different book and we break things down. We just finished the Kabbalion last week. We're looking at going through the Gospel of Thomas to start that one. So we'll get more into the Gnosticism on Thursdays. You believe that near-death experience are the body defense mechanism for a traumatic moment. That's why everyone's NDEs are different and usually lines up with the belief system that they are most familiar with. That is an exact scientific explanation of near-death experience. And I agree with you 100%, my guy. I started asking a question and the minister got mad at me because he didn't know the answer. Yeah, I experienced a whole bunch of that growing up. And you can imagine growing up in the 70s, 80s, and early 90s without the internet. It was very difficult for them, and they would just try to pass it off. But I would show them. I was like, look, I was a kid that pretty much lived in the library. And I was like, hey, according to this book, according to that book, according to this archaeological evidence, according to that archaeological evidence. And mind you, we have a ton more archaeological evidence today than there was available when I was coming up. I'm 51. So, and I've told people many times, it was the homeless people in the library that actually fed me the best information. Better than the librarians. It was the thing that, because them homeless guys, all they do is they sit in the library and they read all day. Some homeless people are way more intelligent than most college professors. But nowadays, you can, I always tell people, if you want to learn something that is, that's not biased for the most part, put in your subject matter .edu in your search. So like if you want to look at research the flood of Noah or Josephus, put edu in there and you'll get .edu and you will find lectures by, you'll find lectures by a lot of these colleges, whether it's Princeton, Harvard, Yale, Colgate, Oxford, where those religious classes are taught, but of course, if it's from somewhere like Dallas Seminary, it's going to have that bias towards it because they have to pledge a bias before you go to that school, before you can take those classes. And they'll give a lot of resources for you to then go check their resources and learn even more. And they have a lot of archaeological evidence to support their claims. And it's just information, not swaying you one way or another. I learned more about Josephus because I read Josephus, but I learned more about Josephus by listening to this college professor. I think he teaches at Harvard. I can see his face. The white guy, bald, wear glasses, small guy, but he does great non-biased lectures. He just gives you the information. What's my thought on cosmology? Ancient texts claim that the world is flat. What do you also think about it? The firmament is mentioned in the Bible too. All right, cosmology. So yes, I do think that the energies from astrological bodies out there does have effect on, just as it has effect on the earth, it has effects on people. Now, I think your experiences have more your experiences and your perceptions have more power over you than anything else, than cosmic entities. Like Mars doesn't make me angry. Venus doesn't make me lovable. Those sorts of things. Now, do I see correlations when I look at my star chart of my birth and like, damn, I am kind of that way when it comes to the different houses? I think it can have a base point. What I used to tell my clients when I was a personal trainer is that 25% of who you are is genetic. The 75% is your environment. So I will put cosmology in the 25% package. So it does have some effect. And of course, we did a talk a couple of weeks ago about astrotheology and how people, they saw comments and they believed that was the harbinger to a birth or death or a change in society and that sort of thing. But as far as a flat Earth ain't flat. They thought it was flat, but you had different cultures around the world at the same time. This culture thinks it's flat, this one doesn't. But as far as the firmament and a dome being over the planet, the way science works on Earth wouldn't work on a flat Earth. It wouldn't work. It just doesn't. And a lot of the people who try to prove flat Earth, their proof is very elementary. It's an elementary thought process. Like when I see a guy, he has a globe and he starts spinning it real fast, and he's like, if a globe was spinning 1,000 miles an hour, you wouldn't feel it. But they're not taking in the size of the Earth. If you take in the size of the Earth and the Earth moving at 1,000 miles per hour, in an hour, it would only move about 3 inches in comparison to a small ass globe that you got in your house. So their math and their science doesn't match up to the reality. And then when they do the, if I'm standing at the Pacific Ocean, I should be able to see the curvature. No, the hell you can't. Your eyes cannot see that wide of a view path to be able to see that, to see the curvature. You can't. All you can see is the horizon. And of course, yes, it looks flat because you're not high enough to see that much space with the size of the Earth to be able to see the curvature. You got to get way the hell out there. You got to get past that. You got to get like up there with the satellites, or even beyond that. You might have to go beyond the Van Allen belt. Western financial institutions are the devil and propped up valueless systems that only backed by our military budget. Other than the devil, and that is created by the devil inside of the minds of the people who created it. But government is an interesting thing for me because I've been in government and I've seen some things that I'm like, God dang, why would we do that? But then I can understand why some things are done. There will never be a utopian style government that is beneficial to all the people. There are better ones, there are worse ones, but they're all going to have their faults. Yeah, without the American military, America wouldn't be as powerful as it is. What do you think about Henry Clark? I know that name. I know that name. Give me a little bit more on him. Right, the devil is in your mind. Give me a little bit more on him. I know it's in my mind, but I can't grab it. Well, yeah, of course the Bible is going to talk about the firmament because other stories prior to that talked about the firmament. You got the comedic story of Jeb and Newt in a Jeb represents the waters. Jeb is the waters below. Newt is the fresh water above. And Ra had to have another child, Shu, and Shu came in. Shu is the wind, and she separated Jeb and Newt. So the waters above and the waters below. This was how they looked up in the sky and saw that blue, and they looked at the ocean, and they see all that blue, and they like, shit, that's water up there. To a certain degree, scientifically, they are right. It is water vapor up there. But they thought that was oceans. And those oceans got windows, and that's how it rains and that sort of thing. So they saw that as there's a dome that has to be up there holding that water from crashing down on people. So in order for rain to happen, God is the God of the rains, is opening windows and allowing rain to fall. They didn't understand. They didn't have the capability to, at least the generation from 12,000 to now didn't have the capability to fly up in the sky. But the moment we started being able to fly up in the sky or to use telescopes and things of that nature, all those ideas start fading away. Science kills most aspects of religion because the bullshit stories that are made up, all of a sudden those stories they can't survive. Once you start understanding cloud formations and weather patterns, well, the God of the storm doesn't work anymore. We start understanding electricity. Well, Zeus and his lightning bolt doesn't work anymore. Thor doesn't work anymore. Shango doesn't work anymore because now we understand how lightning is created. You see a volcano erupting, lightning is coming out of the volcano. Oh shit, we understand the science of it. So the science of lightning. So God's doing it don't work. We start understanding tectonic plates. The god of the volcano doesn't work anymore. So the more and more science figures out how natural energy, natural forces, the universe works, the less and less it can be some deity that's performing some task and having these human characteristics. So the flat earth, and flat earth really gained this huge popularity again, like, what was that, like 1950s or something like that, 50s, 60s, when flat earth became a thing again. And I know the government be lying to us about a lot of stuff. Hell, I've lied to y'all when I was in the government. Not at this scale, not at the scale of firmaments and moon landings and all that stuff, but certainly at lower levels. Hey, this exploded in this country. It was somebody else who did it. But we'd have been in World War III if some of that stuff wouldn't happen. That is one reason why the school system is failing. The school system, but I'm gonna be honest with you, you can't tell everybody everything. Like I told y'all about the threat matrix that we had to put together. If everybody knew about that damn threat matrix, y'all wouldn't go outside. Y'all stay in the house. Especially if you got the whole threat matrix. Not the one that the president gets. That's whittled down to actionable items. I'm talking about the whole thing of every threat that is possible out there that is currently going on, that is being investigated. Y'all wouldn't go outside. Y'all stay now. Is that my employee of the day? He was an African American writer, African Asian speaker. He went blind in his later years. You should look him up. He also read one of his books. Yeah, I know that dude. I just can't. I read him like 20 years plus ago. Good morning, young lady. Well, afternoon, morning.
How are you?
All right. Finishing up my live. I don't know if I can keep talking with you in the room. I don't want to disrespect your religious convictions since I don't know what they are.
I've already watched your lives. If you lose your followers, you would know that.
You watch my lives on Cigar Channel or my lives on my spiritual channel? There's a difference.
I follow you on TikTok and the other one. The TikTok is more spiritual.
I have a cigar one on TikTok as well.
No, I don't follow that one.
Okay, so you know my bullshit?
Yes.
Okay, then I can talk in front of you.
All right then.
Well, I try to be respectful for people, especially, you're watching the lounge from me. I gotta make sure. I don't want you to be like, I can't watch the lounge from him. He's a heathen. Come here. This is Andy.
Hello.
Let me see. All right, we're gonna have to end in a few minutes because I got to get on up to the courthouse. No, yes, Dr. Henry Clark. I've seen him. I've read him like 20 plus years ago. I read his books 20 plus years ago. I can't really remember. I've seen a few videos where I think he was talking. I've seen a few videos where he was talking about, African culture, how it's became part of American culture, and religions have been, how they've taken religions from some of the Yoruba and the Igbo tribes and things of that nature. But it's been a long time. Slaughter said, we got them women down here. She got a man. You got a man, right?
You are single until you are married. I am not married.
Oh, my bad. She's single till she married. She is not married. Excuse me. My bad. What up, Richie? How you doing? Trinidad. You late because I'm about to be done, Richie. We cannot end until you tell that queen I said hello. They have hello, have a prosperous day. So Mr. James Kersey. Am I saying that right? Mr. James Kersey said hello. And I hope that, wait a minute. See, he said hello. And I hope that you have a a prosperous day.
So the same to you, my brother.
He said that out of every moment of your life, he hopes that the gleam in your eye persists and that all joy and happiness runs in the environment and energetic flow of your life. That prosperity comes upon you and that you dwell in the light of the ever glowing light of the all. That is some that's some bullshit. He didn't say all that, but you know how I gotta exaggerate.
Hey, if men still had that same love letter appeal, they would be so much harder in terms of really trying to pursue it.
Men can't have that love letter appeal because too many women of today look at men like that as being weak. And that is why chivalry and things of that nature consistently dies. But then when y'all get older, because you're a youngin', then when y'all get older, y'all start wishing that a man was more chivalrous and had all of that love letter appeal. A few of y'all your age does want it now, but for the most part, no. Because y'all bought into this whole women's lib thing that them white women sucked y'all into. And,
I'm not talking about feminism because feminism is under the cloak of white women's feminism. It's not for us.
So y'all want Thug Nation is what y'all want.
They do, I know.
Until Thug Nation whoop y'all ass, and then all of a sudden y'all talking about, I want somebody more gentle. I want a gentleman. Thanks for the poetic twist. Yes, I'm supposed to be somebody. We ain't gonna name Angie's name. You know, I told her I used to write poetry back in the day, and she is insisting that I get back into my writing of poetry. You know how it is when you lose a habit, to restart a habit becomes difficult. But we went and got books and stuff about what do you call them, journal books and whatever. So I will start writing again. Some of it's gonna be sappy as hell now. But I'm at that age where I don't give a shit what people think about me. Well, hell, I've been that way for a long time. But anyway, so getting off track, gotta go to the courthouse. Got to be one of the first ones in there so I can get back here. Because although I appreciate Andy, I'm not trying to pay her. We trying to build the inventory in here. I don't know why she's laughing. I do need her Saturday, but she's going to be out of town.
A working woman.
Whatever. So today we went through Leviticus 6 and 7. We see a whole lot more blood sacrifice by this deity. We see that it is an impossibility to maintain any of that lifestyle at any point in history. Man could not have maintained that type of a lifestyle. The animals could not have survived. They would have been massacring every goddamn animal they had. Then have to go and conquer some other people to massacre some more animals in order to do all that. We see that it is a way that priests can continue to get money and get wealth by having people bringing them offerings and they getting to keep it. But we also saw that how it's supposed to be perpetual. This is not something that Jesus supposedly ended. If you actually looked at the Jesus writings, Jesus is saying that he is only there for the atonement of your sins at the table of judgment. It is not a continuous thing for your everyday life. But that doctrine became favorable because it was easy. It's easy to live that life. But these people are supposed to keep these commandments, and we know that they're not. They're not. And that is just cruel. It's cruel. I sin, but a baby goat, lamb, dove, pigeon, bull, without defect, has to take on my sin. No. And when Vespasian conquered Judea and began with Josephus and Philo of Alexander to rewrite a new religion for the Jewish people to make them more docile, they had to incorporate this type of doctrine in order for those people to adapt to it and become part of it. So we know that it was not written by an actual disciples or people walking around with a Jesus character. If you go and read the Annals of Titus, you'll see that many of the things that are given to Jesus were written in the Annals of Titus. Those are some of Josephus's writings, which further lets you know that this stuff never happened. So I got to get out of here. Tomorrow is what's tomorrow? Wednesday. Tomorrow's Wednesday. We do not have a subject matter for Wednesday yet. I don't know what we're going to talk about. It depends on the different videos I make today, and then some other ideas, and we'll talk about something else tomorrow. And then Thursday, we are going to start. We're going to start the process of going through the Gospel of Thomas, which is a Gnostic gospel found at Nag Hammadi, which we know that when Theodosius became emperor around 381, he committed the atrocity of murdering all Gnostic Christians, and that's why the Nag Hammadi writings were hidden. But he committed the atrocity of murdering all Christians because he decided that all of Rome must become Orthodox Christian, because Orthodox Christians were Romanized Christians, and they followed the Roman law and Roman rules. They believed in things that whatever king or Caesar was appointed over you was the one that God appointed, which was the precondition that most religions have for most countries anyway, that the royalty was appointed by God. But we know that goes all the way back to when the Sumerians were talking about we're going to take those with the most Anunnaki blood and set up royalties, royal families, and the Anunnaki themselves are going to withdraw from being in the everyday lives of the people on earth. Yeah, it's all connected. It's all connected. It's a great conspiracy. So with that, we will have a discussion tomorrow. Don't know what it's going to be about yet, but I'm pretty sure I'll come up with something. And so y'all have a great day. Remember, you have to free yourself to be yourself, because your greatness is non-negotiable. Good journey, good vibrations, and I will see you guys tomorrow. And we have to close these streams out.